Good day, everyone. Week 6 is here. Today we're going to talk about Unit 10, Managing People. Before we talk about the textbook, I'd like to just say that I really enjoyed reading your research assignments about failed products. Some of them were really funny and I laughed out loud reading them. And I thought you had some really interesting ideas about how to improve the product to make it successful. So thanks for all of your hard work, and I really enjoyed reading your writing. Now let's talk about today's topic, managing people. Maybe you have had job experience working in an office, or maybe you haven't and you're still a student. How can we start thinking about managing different people? It must be intimidating if you've never even worked in an office before. So today we're going to learn about different management styles. Which management style suits you best? Are you someone who's charismatic? Maybe someone autocratic who believes very firmly in following the rules? Or maybe you're more of a coach, someone who likes to teach other people and you have a very good team spirit. What we're going to do today is take a short personality quiz. We're going to find your management style. When we answer these questions, there are no wrong answers. Just choose the answer that you think matches your personality the best. Then at the end, we'll look at our answers and see what kind of management style seems to match your personality. So let's begin. Take out a notebook and write your answer. Number 1. Imagine that you are the manager of a sales team and you have given your team a project that will take about 2 months to complete. How often do you check in on your team? A. A few minutes each day. B. Once a week. C. I'm constantly checking what they're doing. Or D. Maybe once a month, only if I have to. Okay, so write your answer in your notebook, A, B, C, or D. Number 2, your team runs into a problem. What do you do as the manager? A, hold a meeting to find the cause of the problem. B, gather all members and encourage them to share ideas. C, I know what to do and tell them what is going to happen. Or D, nothing. They can solve the problem by themselves. Number 3, how much information do you share with your team? A, I share all information. The more they know, the more we can brainstorm ideas. B, I only share information that is needed for that project. No extra information. C, I tell them what needs to be done and I expect results. D, I forward all information to the team leader I trust the most. Okay, next question. How does your team act around you? A, we're like a family. They can talk to me about anything. B, we have mutual respect, almost as equals. C, we're very formal. I am their boss, not their friend. Or D, we're friendly but professional. I don't have time to hear about their personal lives. And remember, in this situation, you are the manager. How do you want to be treated as a manager? Okay, next. What is your main concern about this project? A, developing your team members' skills to build an all-star team. B, my team's abilities to solve the problems cooperatively. C, that my team followed the correct process efficiently. Or D, I don't care how they do it, I only care about the end result. Okay, now let's count all of your answers. Which letter had the most? Which letter did you have the most answers of? If you are mostly A, you are a coaching type of manager. You use your expertise, your knowledge, to give your team guidance. You're very involved in the process and you want to help them develop their skills. A positive, united attitude is crucial. In other words, you're very focused on the people in your team and you are focused on building and growing them. If you answered mostly B, you are a supporting type of manager. You trust your team. You act as a facilitator or a negotiator between team members, and you have an open mind. You encourage your team to apply their own thinking and focus on collaboration. In this situation, you are also focused on the people in your team, but you're a little more distant and you become a moderator for their work. If you answered mostly C, you are a directing type of manager. You are a strict leader and you believe in the chain of command. You make decisions and the team works to make it happen. It is important to follow the correct process and to finish it on time. In other words, you're very focused on results and you have a no-nonsense attitude about work. Each person has a specific role and they must complete their work well for the whole system to work. Finally, if you answered mostly D, you are a delegating type of manager. You are not very involved with your team at all. You trust them to do their work while you work on your own projects. You know exactly the skills of each team member. In this type of managing style, you are very far away from your team. You just check in on them maybe once a month to see that things are going well, but you have a lot of trust in them and you don't feel the need to get too involved. So, which one did you choose? And do you think that really matches your personality? Personally, I think I like to be a supporting or coaching type of manager, especially as a professor. That's my job, is to help you grow and then manage your teamwork as you use your skills on your own. But every situation needs a different type of manager. Let's take a look at the science behind this management style quiz. I created this quiz based on the situational leadership model. This is a model that shows the different ways that we can approach management of different types of employees. So we can use different managing styles with different employee types. The employee types range from low-skilled employees that are developing, for example, an intern, all the way up to a highly competent and highly motivated employee like an expert. So we can see the color chart here. And at the top, we have a chart of the different management styles. Directive behavior means giving orders or giving instructions. Supportive behavior is giving advice and giving help. So, for example, if you have a very low skill level employee, like an intern, who needs a lot of guidance, you're going to give them a high level of directive behavior. But since you haven't developed much trust in them yet, you aren't going to give them too much independence. You'll be very involved with them. However, if you're working with an expert, then you can feel comfortable with delegating a task to them giving them work to do without any supervision. So, even in one team, you might use a variety of management styles to approach each employee. So, now that we have a nice introduction to different types of management, let's take a look at our textbook. Today, we're going to learn some qualities of a good manager. We have a little thought experiment for you to do. In your notebook, I want you to reflect on what you think are the skills that are needed by a good manager. If you are managing people from different cultures, what personal qualities and skills do you need? You can make a table like this. Okay? Take some time with your notebook, and when you come back, we'll discuss our answers. Welcome back. So, managing people can be very difficult, especially if they come from different cultures. Even within one country, we can have different cultures from one region to another. So, what do we need to be a good manager? Maybe to think of your answer, you thought about a good professor that you had in the past, or a good teacher when you were in high school. I'm going to discuss some examples of personal qualities and skills. However, this is just a sample, and your answers might be different. Personally, I thought that some personal qualities that you would need to manage people from different countries included flexibility, empathy or understanding for their situation. For example, maybe in their culture, they understand a social situation differently. We need to have empathy for our cultural differences. We also need patience. Maybe there's some difficulty with communication, or they work at a different pace. And of course, we need to have open-mindedness. Sometimes when we are faced with a culture shock, it can be very alarming. And we need to have an open mind and accept that things might be different for different people. Now, let's look at the skills. Skills are a little more tangible, and we can teach skills to ourselves. One, of course, is to be good at languages, but that's not the only thing that we need. People tend to focus on language, but also we should be good at other kinds of communication, like visual communication or body language. We should be fairly good at negotiation as well, having a dialogue between people while lowering the amount of conflict. And finally, creative problem solving, finding new ways to resolve a problem. Okay, so now we have an idea of the ideal manager in your mind. Next, let's look at vocabulary. In this week's vocabulary, we're going to look at verbs and prepositions. Prepositions are words like in, to, with, about. When we combine a verb and a preposition, we can use these combinations to describe skills and personal qualities. So for example, before we said a skill we should have is to be good at languages. So take a look at these verbs and at the prepositions. You can match the verb and the preposition. If you don't have a textbook, you can use the list on this PowerPoint slide. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Okay, welcome back. Let's check our answers. Number 1, we respond to employees' concerns promptly. If you're a good manager, you tackle the situation right away. You don't let the problem get worse. Number 2, we listen to all suggestions from staff. You don't have to follow every suggestion, but you should at least listen to them. Number 3, we deal with problems quickly. This is really important. The longer you let a problem get worse, the more difficult it will be to solve it. Number 4, we believe in our employees' abilities. You need to trust your employees and have some faith in their ability. Next, we delegate responsibilities to a deputy as often as possible. Why? Because 1, we're showing trust in our employee. 2, we're creating a hierarchy or system that is efficient and will work well. And finally, we free more time for us to do our personal job, which is managing multiple teams and coordinating on a higher level. Next, we communicate with colleagues clearly, and we invest in regular training courses for employees. So here we have our verbs and prepositions and also some suggestions of good managing skills. So let's review. I put all of the verbs and prepositions together for you to make notes very conveniently. Respond to, listen to, deal with, believe in. Whenever we use a verb and proposition, we always use it with someone or something. Listen to someone, deal with something. However, some verbs combine with more than one preposition. Take a look at these verbs. For example, report to and report on. When we change the preposition, the object of the verb will change. Okay? Can be someone or something. Please take a look at these verbs and then say whether they combine with someone, something, or both. If you don't have your textbook, you can see the whole exercise here on the PowerPoint. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. Number 1A, we report to someone. So, for example, if you are working in a sales team, the salesperson will report to the sales manager. It means that they are their boss. B, we report on something. We report or talk about something. A, we apologize for something that we did, and we apologize to a person. 3A, we talk to someone and talk about something. In casual conversation, we can talk about someone, but this is considered pretty rude and we shouldn't do this in a workplace environment. Number 4, agree with someone or something. Maybe a coworker had an idea and you can agree with the person or you can agree with their idea. B, we can agree on something. 5A, argue about something and argue with someone. Okay, can be a little bit confusing, but the more you practice using these verbs and prepositions, the more naturally they will come to your mind. Now let's look at our next vocabulary activity. We have a fill in the blank, and you can use the prepositions that are in the word bank. If you don't have your textbook, please look at the exercise on the PowerPoint. When we come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. 1. I agreed with her that we need to change our marketing strategy. Number 2. I talk to my boss every Monday at our regular meeting. Number 3. We argued about next year's budget for over an hour. Number 4. He apologized for losing his temper. Number 5. We talked about our financial problems for a long time. Number 6. The finance director argued with our managing director over profit sharing. Number 7. I apologized to Paula for giving her the wrong figures. And 8. Can we agree on the date of our next meeting? Okay, very good. Let's move on to the next part. Today we're going to listen to a conversation about managing people and different managing styles. You'll hear the words of Lori Mullins, who is the author of Management and Organizational Behavior. Listen to the first part and answer these questions. Number 1, who was the first manager that impressed Lori? Number 2, how do you spell his name? Number 3, what was his job? And 4, what 3 things did he emphasize? Don't forget that you can listen to the audio on YouTube. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check our answers. Number 1, who was the first manager that impressed Lori? Lord Sief. Number 2, how do you spell his name? Sieff. Number 3, what was his job? He was the chairman of Marks & Spencer. And 4, what 3 things did he emphasize? Quality control, profit, and staff welfare. If you look at these 3 things, you might realize that quality control ensures customer satisfaction. Profit ensures the health of the company, and staff welfare ensures the satisfaction of its employees. All 3 parts are essential to the success of a business. Let's listen to the second part and complete these notes. There are 2 different people who will be profiled. So if you do not have your textbook, please look at this slide and the next slide. When you finish listening, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. We'll start with the first person, Anita Roddick. She founded the Body Shop in 1976. She displayed a genuine, caring attitude towards staff. She also had a strong belief in environmental and social issues, feminist principles, and practical aid to third world countries. However, she did say that it's not possible to provide environmental and social support without making a profit. So, she declared that she was in business to make a profit. If you ever buy any Body Shop products, you'll see on the back of the box that they are environmentally friendly and don't test on animals. Number 2, Richard Branson. He founded the Virgin brand in 1970. The Virgin brand includes over 360 companies. He is famous for combining a true entrepreneurial spirit with a genuine concern for people. Okay, so hopefully you caught all of those details accurately while you listened. Now let's listen to the final part and complete this summary. You can see the whole text on this one slide. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. All 3 managers have or had a genuine belief in effective communication, involvement, and availability for their staff, visibility so that staff can see them, approach them, and they were able to have immediate contact with them. In other words, the manager is always there to help. All either did or do engender a genuine commitment from members of their staff. All three had or have a genuine belief in creating a climate of mutual consideration, respect, and trust with their staff. In other words, they treat their staff as members of the same team, not as people who should be punished or ordered around. There is a lot of mutual respect and openness with their staff. Now let's go back to the situational leadership model that we talked about in our management style quiz. In your opinion, which leadership style does Lori Mullins believe is the best, and why? Please take a moment with your notebook to write your answer and reflect on what we listened to. Let's move on to the reading part of today's lecture. Before we read the article, you'll see two small paragraphs. Douglas McGregor, a US psychologist, argued that managers always hold one of two theories in regards to their employees. And he called these theories Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X has a sort of negative perspective on employees, whereas Theory Y has a more positive outlook about staff. So, a manager who believes in Theory X believes that employees are naturally lazy. They don't want to do any work, and you really need to push them to do anything. They believe that the only thing motivating their employees are external things like money or some kind of bonus or other perk. Therefore, in these managers' minds, they believe in what in English expression we call the carrot and the stick, an external reward and a punishment. And if you look at this picture, you can see a man riding on a donkey. He uses the carrot on a stick to encourage the donkey to go where he wants. And if the donkey doesn't listen, he will hit him with the stick and punish him. So maybe you've heard this expression before, carrot on a stick. This is the essence of the X theory. Now let's look at the Y theory, which is a lot more positive. Managers who believe in theory Y believe that their workers will put in a lot of effort to their work if they're correctly motivated. They'll work longer hours and they'll produce higher quality work. This is usually because of a growth mindset. They believe that their employees have some internal motivation to improve or grow in a project. There's a lot of personal satisfaction in these types of employees. And it's something that the managers try to encourage and grow by adding a lot of support to their employees. In other words, we can call these theories about extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. We can take a look at these two boys playing soccer. The boy who is extrinsically motivated plays soccer because he wants to earn some kind of reward. He wants a trophy or he wants to be on an all-star team. The other boy, however, who is intrinsically motivated, plays soccer because it makes him feel happy and he has fun playing it. He doesn't really get anything out of it except for his own personal well-being. Now let's think about this in an office situation. With extrinsic motivation, it's really easy to give, but it's hard to keep the benefits for a long time. We can give extrinsic motivation by giving an employee a bonus, giving them a raise or a promotion. That always feels good. Or giving them praise or even an award like Employee of the Month or a cash prize or a nice gift. The problem with these extrinsic motivators is that they feel really amazing when you get them, but then they quickly disappear. And then the employee is feeling very unmotivated again. Then what do? Give them another bonus, and it goes away. Give them another raise, and then they're not satisfied anymore. Give them another award, and then they're unsatisfied. How many times can a company really award each employee like this? It's just not sustainable. And over time, it creates a very jaded employee, an employee who begins to care less and less about his work. How about intrinsic motivation? Well, it's a lot harder to find, but it has much longer lasting results. Intrinsic motivation comes from an employee's sense of curiosity. Maybe they're actually very interested in their work and they have a lot of passion for it. They derive a sense of growth from their projects as well. They can see a clear path of what they need to do, and they just want to get there. They want to succeed because succeeding feels good. They might also sense some purpose to their work. This is very true for jobs like people who are doctors, who are teachers, or who volunteer at charities. They feel like their work is meaningful and has an impact outside of themselves. Finally, they might also be motivated by a sense of community, either because their work has an effect on the outside community or they have a very strong work community that they feel affiliated with. Of course, these types of motivation are really hard for a manager to give. It requires a lot more work and planning. Now let's read the article in your textbook. Read the article and then try to decide which theory is supported by the management of Ruby's company and which is supported by the management of Geraldine's company. You're going to read this article and find that each woman works for a very different company. When you come back, we'll review your notes and discuss the answers. Welcome back. So you read about Ruby and Geraldine's work situations, and wow, they were totally different. One of them was definitely worse than the other. Let's start with Ruby. Ruby was called into a meeting called Help Our Recovery. Even from the name of the meeting, we can understand what is going to happen in this meeting. We have some communication about the purpose and also our involvement. Her company had a policy of honesty and open communication. They were very clear about what would happen and how each person could contribute. They invited everyone to find a solution. This displays a lot of mutual trust and respect. It was a very constructive meeting as well. They were focused on finding a solution. Finally, Ruby left the meeting feeling like a player and not a spectator. This is a great indication of her increasing feelings of motivation. She feels involved and invested in her company. Geraldine, on the other hand, went to a meeting called a Cascade meeting. This name doesn't tell us any information. It's actually very mysterious and can sound a little scary. When she went to the meeting, she only knew about rumors that she had heard. Why? Because the directors were unavailable. They were very closed in their communication. In fact, there was no communication at all until the meeting. At the meeting, they were given a very shocking reveal, which of course created a lot of negative feelings in the employees. And they weren't really focused on a solution, they were focused on damage control. This immediately puts a sense of panic in everyone's mind. Finally, Geraldine left the meeting feeling like a victim instead of feeling like a team player. She felt like her company had betrayed her in some way. So I think we can agree that Ruby's company believes in intrinsic theory, theory Y, and Geraldine's company believes in extrinsic theory, theory X. Unfortunately, they provided a lot of negative extrinsic motivations to Geraldine and her coworkers. I'm going to teach you an English slang for Geraldine's company. They followed a philosophy called mushroom management. What is mushroom management? Well, it's when you keep employees in the dark and feed them bullshit. When you keep someone in the dark, it means that you hide information from them. So Geraldine's company didn't say anything, and they also hid from the employees so that they couldn't ask them any questions. Next, when you feed someone bullshit, it means that you're telling them lies. You're just saying something to make them go away, and you're not being very honest with them. So, unfortunately, Geraldine's company didn't treat their employees very well. Now let's read the article again and answer if these statements are true, false, or if the article didn't say. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Number 1. Ruby and Geraldine are both invited to a meeting. True. Number 2. Ruby felt a part of the decision-making process. Yes, she did. 3. Ruby and Geraldine both left their meetings in shock. False. Ruby felt like she learned a lot of information and was well informed. However, Geraldine was definitely in shock. Number 4. The companies are both having problems. That's true. 5. Geraldine enjoyed her meeting more than Ruby. Absolutely not. It was a terrible meeting. 6. Communication was better in Geraldine's company than Ruby's. That is a lie. 7. After the meeting, Ruby was invited to a staff party. It doesn't say, but probably not. 8. Geraldine's company focused on reduction. That's true. And Geraldine is looking for another job. It didn't say, but I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, if you want to watch a really funny clip from The Office, I think that this scene gives a great example of the different kinds of motivation and how it can really affect the employee's work ethic. I can't show it in our lecture video because of copyright reasons, but I will provide the link on YSEC. In this clip, their manager tries to apply the extrinsic theory. He tells the employees that if they perform well, they can earn points. And with those points, they can buy some cool prizes. But the prizes all suck. It looks like an elementary school point system. And even though he's trying to motivate the employees, he has the complete opposite reaction. Actually, he just made them mad. But they find a solution that makes them more motivated by this reward process. He says that if they win enough points, they can choose a tattoo for him to put on his body. Okay, so go ahead and watch this clip. It's really funny. And yeah, we'll see the difference, two different kinds of motivation in this clip. Okay, next, we're going to talk about grammar in this week, as usual. This week, we're going to learn about reported speech. Reported, just like a news reporter or, a science report. We use reported speech to indirectly repeat what somebody said. Let's take a look at some details of this. Reported speech is constructed differently depending on when it was said. First, let's talk about something that was recently said. Maybe he just said it 2 minutes ago. When it was recently said, we're going to use the same tense when we report the speech. Take a look at this picture. We have a receptionist who has come to repeat a phone call to her manager. This phone call happened 5 minutes ago. And when she called, she said, "I want to discuss the report." Now the assistant is going to report the speech. Susan just called and said she wants to discuss the report. So the call is in the past tense, but the reported speech is in the same tense. I want to discuss. She wants to discuss. But what about if the quote was said in the past, maybe last week or yesterday or last year? If it was said in the past, the verb goes back 1/10, and the nouns and pronouns may change. So now we're showing a little more distance between now and the reported speech. So now we see Susan, and she is remembering a conversation that she had with this guy yesterday. Yesterday, you told me that the report was ready. Okay, so here the speech is in present tense. The report is ready. But this happened yesterday. So now we change the tense and we go back one level. So present simple, past simple. If you're ever confused about which verb tense to use, you can always look at a chart like this. It's pretty simple. Just start with your verb tense, present simple, and go back one into the past. However, if you are reporting speech that uses future tense will, the past tense of will is would. So, I will do my homework. You said you would do your homework. I will be doing my homework. You said you would be doing your homework. I will have done my homework by then. You said that you would have done your homework. I will have been doing my homework. You said that you would have been doing your homework. Don't worry too much about the future perfect continuous because this is not as commonly used as the other tenses. One more thing, if someone said something in the past tense, I did my homework, the level behind that is the perfect, past perfect simple. You said that you had done your homework. Okay, so let's take a look at an example, and hopefully that'll make it a little more clear. Here we have the same situation, we just changed his reported speech. Yesterday, he said, "I will fix it." Yesterday, you said that you would fix it. Will, would. How about future tense, be going to? So we have the exact same idea, be going to. You said that you were going to do it. When we change the future tense be going to, we only change the be verb. I am, you were. You were going to do it. Okay. When we use reported speech, we often use say and tell. He said that he would solve the problem. He told Susan that he would solve the problem. If we use the word tell, we need to use an object. He told her. He told him. He told someone. We always need an object. Now let's look in your book, page 100, and we're going to practice reported speech with this exercise. Complete these sentences with the correct form of say or tell. If you don't have your book, you can look at the PowerPoint. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. Number 1, he said that I was late. So we're going to look for an object. Is there an object? No. He said that I was late. Number 2, he told me that I was late. She told him to work harder. She said they would never agree. Nobody told me that she was the CEO. She said that she worked for Toyota. Okay, so always look for the object, me, him, they. Now let's look at exercise B. Rewrite these sentences in reported speech by changing the tenses. Begin with he, she, or they said. And we can see the name of the speaker. In the first one, Hamza is a man. Okay, Hamza is a man. Adela is a woman. Susan and Sharon are both women. Pierre is a man. Justin is a man. And Eleanor is also a woman. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Okay, let's check your answers. This one might have been a little bit more difficult. Let's take a look. Number 1, he said that he wasn't enjoying his job very much. Number 2, she said that she wanted to listen to her staff more. Number 3, they said that they needed to invest in the development of staff. Number 4, he said that he was feeling under pressure at work. Number 5, he said that the company had been performing badly. And 6, she said that she was going to look for a new job. Let's look a little more closely at number 4 and 5. Okay, so for the other questions, we had some pretty simple verb tenses. Present, right? I am, I want, we need, changes into the past simple. Wasn't, wanted, needed. Number 4, I am feeling is the present progressive or present continuous. This will change to past, and when we change it to past continuous, we change the be verb. He was feeling. Number 5, has been performing. Woo, this one's a doozy. We're going to change just the auxiliary verb. Has, had. And number 6, again, we have present continuous that changes into past continuous. Okay. Now let's look at the case study. I think that this case study is really interesting for us to look at in this class, but I understand that some students do not have access to the textbook. So what I've done is I've modified this activity for us to do together in the PowerPoint and with the documents that I've uploaded on YSEC. So if you don't have your textbook, you can always just follow the PowerPoint. So in this case study, they talk about some tensions within a team, and these tensions are damaging the operations at a property company. This is a company that has many consultants that help clients buy property. What kind of management strategy can you use to improve the situation? these employees are having lots of conflict and they need management to step in and help improve their work environment. So if you do have the textbook, you can read each consultant's profile and then think, what kind of motivation do they have? Intrinsic or extrinsic? And what are their strengths and weaknesses? Each employee is different and they will have different motivations and different strengths. If you don't have the textbook, you're going to find a document on YSEC that you can look at instead. So before we talked about many different types of managers and managing styles, now let's talk about the different types of employees, because different employees require different managing styles. And if you do any research on management strategy, you'll find that there are so many different theories and so many different personality types, and it can get a little overwhelming. So, for example, let's say you are interviewing many different people for the same job. Maybe their skills are the same and they have the same education, but their personalities will be totally different. You might have an opinionated expert, a charismatic joker, someone who's quiet and hardworking, someone who's intense, or someone who's very creative. Even though they all want the same job position, they're going to work very differently. And when we choose an employee, we're choosing not just their skill, but also how they will work in our team. Will they match our team culture? Will we work well with them? And will they work well with us? Maybe an easier way to think about it is to think about the types of students that you've worked with. Think about a group project that you are assigned in a class, and all of the students are randomly assigned. I know every student hates a random group project. When I was a student, I hated that too. And every time you have a group project, you always seem to end up with the same students. So let's look at the first type of student that you probably are teamed up with. That's the lazy one. The lazy one answers the first message and then disappears. And then you can't contact them at all and they do no work. The second kind is the shy one. The shy one will do their work very diligently, but maybe they don't contribute much else. So in a presentation project, they'll write the script, but they won't want to present. Next, the friends. These two students who are always giggling and chatting or texting each other and not very involved in the work. Next is the serious one. Oh, thank you, serious one, for existing in our lives. They are very organized and they do most of the work. Maybe they take on a leadership role because they actually care about the project and they want to get a good score. Then there's the average one. They're not incredibly lazy and they're not super serious, but they do their fair share of the work and, they're happy if they get a B. Or maybe there's another type of student that you know. Which kind of student are you? How do you think these type of students will perform in a work environment? So after you graduate university and go into an office, what will they be like as your coworkers or your team members? So let's think about the situational leadership model again. We should respond to different employees using different strategies. So remember down here, we can see the different employee levels of skill and motivation. So maybe they're motivated by their curiosity and they have intrinsic motivation, or maybe they're motivated by an external reward, like getting a passing grade is the only thing that they care about. We can also think about the employee's age. In North America, they use these terms to generally describe people who are in different age groups. So if you look at this chart, you can see how they're described. And each generation has a different type of personality. So for example, the oldest group on this chart, boomers, they tend to be more traditional and they follow more concrete processes. Maybe they're not as good at technology. But if we look at the youngest generation, Gen Z or Gen Z, they're very technologically intelligent, they're very fast paced, and they like to multitask. So consider the age and the personality of the person in your team before you apply a management strategy. Even just 1 or 2 years of life experience can make a big difference. I once had a student who used to come into class very hungover or late or would miss many, many classes and was a huge party animal. And then he went to the military, and when he came back, he was the perfect student, very organized, very serious, always worked very hard, and just overall became a much better student. And I asked him, what happened? And he said, the military made me a better person, and I learned how to organize my life. So, someone's life experience can really change how they work as an employee or as a team member in a school project. Okay, so maybe you've figured out how to assess each employee. Maybe, okay, he has a really high skill level, but his motivation is low. She has a great skill level and great motivation. Now, what do we do with them? You can take a look at this chart, okay? Don't only think about their skills and motivation, but also their personality. But anyway, let's look at this chart. Let's start at the worst part. If their performance level is really low and they have a very low level of potential, meaning they're not open to growth, they're just going to stay at the same level, then this is probably a bad hire, so we should replace this employee. If, however, they show some potential or that their skills are pretty good, we can try to focus on improving this employee, maybe through a coaching strategy. Or if they have a really high potential or a really high skill level, but they're just mismatched, then we can try to reassign them or reconsider their role in our team. If they have a really high skill level and a really high potential to grow, then we're going to prepare them for a future role or a promotion. But remember, personality is a big factor too. If you have someone who is a fantastic worker with a lot of skills and a lot of motivation to work, but they don't have a very strong leadership personality, then you probably don't want to put them in a management position. Okay, so let's talk about this week's participation work. This is a modification of the case study in our textbook. For our participation work, you're going to practice managing different employees. Number 1, read the employee descriptions. Number 2, describe their skills and their problems. Number 3, explain which management strategy you would use and why. And 4, who will you keep on your team? And explain your reasons why. You'll see the document on YSEC and it looks like this. First, of course, choose your course and then read each employee's profile. There are 4 different employees. Then you're going to apply the theories that we learned, and you can use these charts to decide how you will manage this particular employee. Then at the end, Tell me who you want on your team. Maybe you'll keep all of them. Maybe you'll fire everyone. It's up to you. You're the manager. Okay, so now that we've finished with our textbook content, let's talk about our office culture moment. And today I present a Dilbert comic. This is a very famous comic character who has existed since the 80s or the 90s. And you'll see a Dilbert comic in every office around in America. Everyone knows him. So in this comic strip, we see a young employee talking to an older employee. The young employee says, "I keep telling people how to do their jobs, but no one takes my advice. Maybe it's because you're so inexperienced that you don't realize how bad your advice is." That's ridiculous. How can I be so wrong and yet feel so confident? I miss being young. So, what do you think is the theme of this comic strip? Well, the main theme is giving advice. How can we give advice that is useful and that people will really listen to? In this situation, he is giving unwanted advice. He's giving advice that isn't helpful to people. He doesn't realize that his experience is useless to more senior members of the staff. So, we're going to talk about constructive criticism, how to give it, and how to take it. First, let me tell you about my personal experiences with constructive criticism. I went to university to study literature and creative writing, but I also really enjoyed other artistic subjects. And in the creative writing process, it pretty much was a whole education about getting criticized and having people take your work that is so personal and so precious and just tell you everything that was terrible about it. My first my first experience with constructive criticism happened in a studio art class. In this class, we would meet and draw pictures from a live model. And then at the end of the 3 hour class, the, the art professor, who was this very strict Brazilian woman, she would she would call everyone and say, "Everyone, it's time to show your work." And we would put all of our art in a big circle and we would walk around the circle and she would point at each painting or drawing and say, "No, no, this is awful. This one is terrible. Look at that. Don't do that." And she would tear everyone apart and everyone would just feel so horrible. This sort of constructive criticism was very instructor focused. No one else was speaking during this uh, critiquing time. She was the authority, and she would go around telling everyone what was wrong. It was very directive. She didn't give helpful advice to help us think for ourselves. She just told us what she thought was good and what she thought was bad. This created a lot of negative feelings for the students in this class. And now that I'm a professor, I realize that this is actually a really poor model of constructive criticism. It made everyone feel so scared of her class, and it just made everything so awful. Then my next experiences with constructive criticism happened in writing workshops. And you can even see from the photo that it's a completely different environment. This type of critique was a lot more peer focused. Every student had time to express their own opinion, and each student was treated as an equal. As a result, the approach was very mixed. So you might hear advice from one person who was really focused on style, one person was focused on structure, one person was focused on characters, and it gave a very diverse opinion about your work. It also focused on suggestions. So whenever we gave a critique, we always had to suggest a way to solve that problem. As a result, you sometimes got your feelings hurt, but you always walked away with something to think about, and it made you really consider how to improve your work. In my opinion, I think this is a much better model of constructive criticism. So, how can we apply constructive criticism in the workplace? We can use something called the feedback sandwich. This is a very common term in the work world, and the feedback sandwich is pretty simple. First, we put the first piece of bread, and we begin with something positive. We give a compliment and talk about what worked well. Then we put the real meat in the sandwich. This is the constructive part. We talk about what didn't work, but really importantly, we talk about why it didn't work. And we always give ways to address the problem. Then, to make it all nice and neat, we add a little bit more positivity. We reaffirm the successful skills and we show a positive way forward. This makes it a lot more pleasant to hear the constructive criticism, and it also boosts the morale of the person you're talking to. When we give our constructive criticism, which is the green part in the middle, we should do 4 things. Number 1, focus on observation, not interpretation. You're not here to make assumptions, you just are telling them exactly what it is from the outside. Number 2, we focus on the behavior or the action and not the person. We want to focus on what they did, not who they are. So, for example, don't say, "You're so lazy." Instead, you can say, "You were late today. You were late 3 times." Now we have some objective evidence instead of a personal attack. Number 3, we should focus on things that can be changed. If you focus on something that they can't control, then it just increases a negative feeling and makes them feel like they can't change the situation. So, for example, maybe they're late on a project because they're waiting for another team member to complete something. In that case, they can't do anything. So, we need to give them more useful advice. And number 4, focus on a solution. Be specific and, more importantly, be realistic with your solution. It should be something that they can actually do. In total, be objective and be helpful. Don't just attack or complain. Let's take a look at a sample situation and look at some constructive criticism. In this situation, Travis works well alone, but he avoids working with his team. First, we begin with a positive. "I respect people who are able to solve problems alone and move ahead. Travis, you're a quick learner and very efficient, and you produce good work." Now we give the real stuff, the constructive criticism. "However, Travis, I've noticed that you haven't engaged much with your team. At some point, we all need a helping hand. Your expertise is valuable to everyone on your team, and they have value as well. You should use this opportunity to share your knowledge and observe the way that others do their work. Clear communication is the key to our success in such a complex project." Now, in this constructive phase, we're not just telling him, "You're being selfish." We're also affirming that he is useful and that other people are useful and helpful as well. The language is very positive. Then we end with another positive statement. Travis, the work that you've done so far is great. Now let's bring it to the table and really get the most out of it. So now we've given him some constructive criticism that's really uplifting and really encouraging for him. It makes him feel like part of a big team rather than an outsider or a loner. So, how about taking constructive criticism? Let's say you are Travis. It can be very painful, and I definitely have cried after getting some really terrible critiques. But the key is not to take it personally. You need to grow a very thick skin. Separate the words from the speaker. Don't think about their tone, don't think about their body language. Just think about the content of their words. Then treat their feedback as a tool. You always choose how to grow from the experience. Maybe they give you some constructive criticism and you decide that it isn't what you want to do. That's okay. It's your choice. You are using their words as a tool for you to use. Okay? So, very hard. You definitely learn this from experience and getting your heart broken many times, but you will get there eventually. So, in summary, today we talked about 1, different managing styles, 2, the different kinds of motivation, intrinsic, extrinsic, and the different employee types. In our grammar point, we talked about reported speech, and finally, in our office culture moment, we talked about constructive criticism. Don't forget that your participation work involves managing different employees. Please use the Word document version and not the textbook. You can submit the document directly to YSEC. And remember, we have an entire week to complete your work. So, thank you very much for listening to my lecture. I really enjoy reading your work and I look forward to reading your next assignment. Take care and have a great week. Goodbye.